Welcome to Labor's View. This show is brought to you by the very hardworking and dedicated employees of the Essex County Division of Family Assistance and Benefits, that's our new name, formerly the Division of Welfare. Our members are the non-supervisory employees of that agency, and their union is Communication Workers of America, Local 1081. I'm David Weiner, president of the local and host of Labor's View. Our guest tonight is Beverly Brown Ruggia, who works for New Jersey Citizen Action, who's a statewide, which is a statewide activist organization, I think the best that there is in the state of New Jersey, but I'm a little bit biased since I co-chaired the board for a number of years and been on the board for a number of years. And Beverly, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, David. I'm glad to be here.
I'm happy to have had you. So, give us a little background about Citizen Action, segue, if you will, into yourself, and then we'll get into the main topic.
Sure. Citizen Action, as you know, is a statewide nonprofit organization that has been working for economic and social justice for more than 30 years. Citizen Action is a unique organization in that we both provide direct services and empowerment programs, and we're also an advocacy organization working on issues like family and workplace issues, health, consumer financial protection issues, and a lot of issues to do with a lot of things to do with healthcare. And that's where we bring citizens of New Jersey into action to work for themselves, for equity and justice.
Okay, and your title is CRA organizer.
That's correct.
Community Reinvestment Act.
Yes.
Organizer, and that deals with getting banks basically to, primarily when they merge, right, to do the right thing when they come into an area, when it is particularly for the urban areas in terms of loans and other
and retail
products.
Banking services.
Right.
That's correct.
So in order to undo or at least mitigate a lot of the bad practices in the past, such as redlining and keeping minorities and others that were considered undesirables to some out of some neighborhoods in terms of buying, even if they could afford.
Exactly. The Community Reinvestment Act was passed in 1977 and requires banks to lend and provide services equitably in any community where they do business. And Citizen Action is one of the most active watchdogs of CRA practices, and what we do is look at performance of banks to make sure that they are providing loans fairly and that access to credit, access to capital for individuals and small businesses, and that they're providing mortgages for people who want to buy homes where they want to buy them. If they're not, as you mentioned, the only time that we have an opportunity to really intervene is when a bank wants to merge. If they put in an application for merging with another company, and we can demonstrate that they have not been performing well, that can hold up a merger, which is quite significant for a bank.
Which we did recently with the bank that's right actually on the first floor of this building.
Correct. I believe you're talking about M&T Bank.
Right, and they bought out to Hudson City.
That's exactly right. Hudson City Bank was a bank that was based in New Jersey, and at the time of the application for the merger, Citizen Action and a number of organizations filed challenges to the merger with the regulator, with the bank's regulator, because we had found that the bank had clearly been discriminating against African Americans and Latinos all across New Jersey and in fact in New York as well. So the application process slowed down. We were actually able to get the regulator to look at that performance. I will say that M&T Bank did come forward and meet with us. I believe you sat in some of the meetings with us to talk about what they were going to have to do if we were going to welcome them into New Jersey as the new, the bank taking over Hudson City Savings Bank. And they have continued to work with us, and they've done a pretty good job. But the challenge that we filed led to a Department of Justice and Consumer Financial Protection Bureau investigation that did find that Hudson City Savings had been discriminating against African Americans and Latinos. The bank was fined. The merger was approved, but M&T Bank is required to carry out the consent order, which will mean that there will be some kind of...
They eat the penalty.
They eat the penalty, exactly.
But how many millions?
I think it was $30 million. It's a lot of money.
Sure, it's
well, not for them.
Not
but
for them.
Yeah, but not for them at all.
And it's kind of like the Wells Fargo thing people might be reading about. It's a different issue, Wells Fargo. That's really egregious, where their employees were, some of them, a number of them, they fired 5,000 people.
Over 5,000.
And they're paying hundreds of millions of dollars in fines, where without people's consent or even knowledge, setting them up in products and stuff that they didn't want anything to do with.
Right,
So,
exactly. But that's, and that's another aspect of CRA, which is, well, it's a consumer financial protection issue, but it's an abuse. It's abusive practices by the bank, and that's something that Citizen Action also watchdogs regularly.
And I've oft opined, being a Wells Fargo customer, only because I've been changed about 9 iterations over the last 30 years.
Your banks were bought up, right?
They're all bought up, and then I ended up with Wells Fargo, and I always say to my wife, it's the ugliest interior I've ever seen. I don't even go there anymore. I let her go because she's retired. I just get I'm like a man of the night. My wife leaves me an envelope with cash on the mantle, with or without any services. I don't want to get too graphic, but and everything. I don't see my money at all. I don't care. I just work. So you have a specific issue today that you want to talk about, which is?
I do. I'm here to talk about high-cost predatory payday lending. Payday loans are typically small dollar. We call them small dollar loans, generally around $350, $400, which are usually issued by non-banks. And these loans average an APR of 400%.
Explain what an APR is.
That is the interest rate that you're charged for taking out the loan. So you may take out a $350 loan, you may end up paying $500, $600 back on that loan. These are usually quick turnaround loans. The lenders do not look into whether the borrower has an ability to repay the loan. I'm sure people have seen advertisements for the loans. Come in tomorrow, you get $500. They can go as high as $5,000, but or more. But typically they're between $300 and $400 or $300 and $500. People get the money immediately, but there's also usually a balloon payment due within the first 2 weeks. And the way that the lender gets the payment is by attaching them. They get permission to withdraw money from your bank. They'll take a post-dated check, or they'll get electronic permission to have access to the borrower's bank account. Unfortunately, because they're preying on people who generally are in very bad shape financially.
Or they wouldn't have gone there in the first
place.
Exactly.
The borrower is likely to default on the loan. And it's been proven that the lenders actually know that. The lenders have been found to have business models which depend on the borrowers failing. 75% of the profits for payday lenders are from repeat fees from repeat borrowers. And you're talking about approximately 12 million people annually taking out as much as $50 billion a year in loans. And it's $36 million is often just from fees in the profits for the lenders.
Who's behind these?
These are often standalone companies or companies that are doing things like check cashing, but they're large non-bank institutions. They are often financed by banks, but it's a relatively new industry, and they're doing very well. So these are payday lending companies. You've probably heard something in the news recently. There are some Indian reservations that are getting into payday lending, but generally speaking, you have very large companies that are dedicated to this industry. New Jersey, fortunately, prohibits payday lending by virtue of a state usury cap. Unfortunately, the lenders still market to the payday lenders still market very aggressively to people in New Jersey online, and they're able to issue or at least get customers through lead generators. In other words, you might have a storefront here that doesn't actually give out the loan, but they will connect.
They'll do the referrals.
Exactly, they'll do the referrals. So for us in New Jersey, despite the fact that we have this prohibition, we still have citizens in this state who are falling victim to these very, very predatory and harmful loans. We call it a debt trap loan, because once a person starts to, you get in, you fail.
It's a cycle.
It's a cycle. The lender will gladly give you another one, but you get the next one and you incur you get a higher interest rate, you incur fees. They've attached themselves to your bank account so that if you don't have, you get your paycheck, but you had to pay, your card was damaged and you had an unexpected expense, and the money's not in there, they will still try to take the money out. So you may incur fees from your own bank. They will charge you, the payday lender will charge you a penalty, and so the fees mount up, and that's where you get to these 400% interest rates.
Have you had? Oh, by the way, that's our air conditioning that just went on. So
Okay.
It'll be annoying for the rest of the show, but so am I, so it doesn't matter. Have you tracked Citizen Action and you being the lead, some of the actual effects upon people that have been caught up into this usurious system?
What we know is that 75% of the fees in this huge industry come from repeat borrowers. So people are, as we said before, locked into a cycle of debt, meaning that they're sort of chained to this ongoing payday loan. They can't get rid of it, which means that many of them are going bankrupt. You see people going into bankruptcy. They're not able to pay other bills. It's exacerbating medical debt. Any other kind of debt that they have is going to get bigger. It's going to hurt their credit. These are it's long-term financial harm. It really sets these borrowers back. They're not able to take care of even their basic needs. We were contacted by a woman in New Jersey who was going through a divorce. Her son had a medical bill, and she was very afraid to have any debts. So she took out a payday loan, but then she lost her job. She couldn't pay it back. That $800 loan turned into a $4,000 extended debt. She kept falling, couldn't pay the loan back, kept taking out another one. She ended up paying $4,000 on that loan. So that impacted her ability to get apartments when she moved a couple of times, at least twice, and it impacted her ability to get apartments. She ended up having to borrow money from friends and family, and what she said to me was, had I understood what I was going to get into, I just would have borrowed the $800 to begin with. Many people are too embarrassed to do that. She said, well...
From family.
From family, right. Imagine how embarrassed I was by the time I had to borrow to pay back $4,000. That's actually...
It's kind of like the mafia. I mean, they put money on the street.
This is legal loan sharking.
They don't break your legs, they just take the money from your bank account.
No, it's just a ongoing torturous, it's more like Chinese water torture. Right. They may not break your knees, but you're really enslaved to this nagging debt. And so the impact can vary, but it's huge. People are, they can't get on with their lives, they're stuck with this debt. They're in much worse shape than they were when they started, and that's really it's really tragic, because these lenders are essentially legal loan sharks taking advantage of these people who are usually desperate and making millions. You're talking approximately 12 million people take out payday loans a year. It's considered a $50 billion industry, and about $3.4 billion comes just from these fees, from extra fees. So
they want you to fall behind.
They want you to fail. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau actually investigated and fined a lender, a payday lender called Ace Cash Express, in 2014 for harassment collection tactics. And they also discovered in the manual of the company a diagram, a cycle. It's just a cycle that says you give out the loan, they fail to pay the loan, you offer them another one, you give them the next one, and it goes on and on and on. That was built into their business model. That's their business model. Yep. And in fact, I believe I said that payday lending is illegal in New Jersey. Citizen action
It's legal.
sorry,
Illegal.
is illegal, yes,
Illegal.
is illegal in New Jersey. And Citizen Action discovered a couple of years ago, or last year I should say, that our state pension fund was invested in that very same company, Ace Cash Express, that was fined for illegal harassment tactics and that had the built-in cycle.
Well, since our union members, 1081 and other public employees are in the state pension system, we're curious, did we get them out?
We did. We were
Okay.
successful, and I think we had union members with us at the state house. We were at the state pension. Sorry, we had a lot of support from unions when we spoke before the state pension council, and we were successful in getting them to divest from that company. But it just shows how insidious this whole industry is. Even in a state where it's illegal, they were able to get investments from the state pension fund.
And they're getting around it online?
They are getting around it online. They market aggressively to people in New Jersey, and they're lending to people in New Jersey.
Even though it's illegal?
It's illegal, and they still do it.
So what are you going to do about it?
So the law in New Jersey, which...
What are we going to do about it?
What are we going to do about it? In New Jersey, as I said, there is a state usury cap, meaning you can't have an interest rate for this type of loan of more than 30%. That should inherently stop these loans. Unfortunately, because they are based in other states, they can still come to New Jersey and make loans. The ideal thing would be a national usury cap. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen in Congress anytime soon. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was put in place when the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act was passed, to protect...
As a result of the 2008 crash.
Yes,
of
horrendous abuses that were exposed during the crash, the abuses by Wall Street on average consumers. And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is the brainchild of Elizabeth Warren. It was put in place specifically to protect consumers where their financial tools were concerned, whether it's banking, investment, all of those kinds of things, lending, any kind of lending. So the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau took up the issue of payday lending and is going to be issuing a regulation over payday lending and auto title loans across the country. They released a proposed rule this past June. The good news is that they've looked at the idea that there must be an ability to repay element in the loan terms. In other words, they need to look at what your daily expenses are. If you make $300 a week and you take out a $300 loan, you're not, first of all, you don't take home $300, and second of all, you have other expenses.
Right.
And so they will be looking at your ability to repay based on your actual expenses. They're going to be doing underwriting, new concept, but looking at how people can actually pay back these loans so that you don't have unrealistic terms set up, and which are going to make you fail. And they're also looking at the number of loans that people can take out at a time. What we advocates are looking for is a stronger rule. We want, number one, that there should not be any repeat loans until a person has been able to pay back the first loan. We don't want people to fall into that recidivism. Exactly. So we are calling on citizens from New Jersey and all across the country to write the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and ask them to strengthen that rule, to close that loophole. The other thing that we're asking for is that the rule explicitly state that any violation of a state prohibition is something called UDAP, unfair, deceptive, and abusive practices. That would make it a federal violation, making it easier for a state like New Jersey to take action against any lender that comes into the state. And so those are two key things. We really don't want any recidivism. We want the ability to repay the loan to be strong, or element in the loan to be strong, and we want these loans to be declared UDAP, or unfair, deceptive, and abusive practices. And we're in what you call the comment period. Once a regulator like the CFPB issues a proposed rule, the public has an opportunity to comment on that rule. And Citizen Action is taking comments, delivering them to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and any one of your members can go online to the website. It's www.njcitizenaction.org, and you can click and submit a comment to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau very quickly. It takes
I'll
a
be
couple
putting
minutes.
that out to our entire agency.
Really
sometime
appreciate it.
this
And
evening.
the deadline is October 7th, so we're coming to the end of that. And you should know that the industry is working hard to counter our comments. They're bringing in...
No surprise.
Right, no surprise. And one of the things typically of these kinds of lenders is that when people are going in to get their payday loans now, they have to fill out a comment letter as they get their payday loan. So
How happy they are.
how happy delighted they are to get these loans. I should say that one of the arguments, of course, is that this is giving people access to credit, and I will tell you that it is not. This is the opposite of access to capital that will lead to sustainable financial living. It's just the opposite of that. It's a gateway to financial hell. It is not access to capital or credit. I think it was Congresswoman Waters who said, Flint, Michigan has access to plenty of water. That's not the problem. It's what they're drinking.
Right.
And so it's the same thing with these toxic.
Well, it's the wrong water supply, but that's another story.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing because Citizen Action is working. We talked about this at the beginning of the conversation. Is working to get banks to provide access to capital and credit that is safe, but that's available to everyone, even low and moderate income borrowers.
Right.
That's the key, is you want good access to safe forms of credit. None of this usury.
It would seem that and as well as this, the whole idea would be that it would show up the financial firmament, and therefore logically the sociological firmament of communities that are wanting now, and bring everybody.
Absolutely.
And be of benefit to even people of means, even though they're not affected directly by it. It would enable the society to be bettered.
I think you and I both know when everybody has a place to live, they have the ability to manage their finances, they have pay equity, they're earning enough. First of all, I mean that's a huge problem that we didn't talk about today, but it's another right. But when everybody does well, even those at the top do better. I mean, the point is that the things that have to be done to correct what goes wrong when people are not banked, when people lose their homes, when people aren't paid enough, those costs may not be obvious up front, but those are tremendous costs to society as a whole.
Well, because the sociological system then breaks down. And I just watched a thing actually last night on L.A. and the gangs, and I never realized they went back and showed how after World War II, you had a lot of minorities come up from the South for work during the war, and then you had the major GM, Chrysler, the tire companies, and then when they all outsourced and left, the middle class minorities, black and Hispanic, fell apart. Yep. The families fell apart, and now the only thing available to the young people, by and large, are drugs, and then they get these gangs together, and they're
really alternative economies.
Exactly.
They're not safe, but they're alternative economies.
It's a way to survive.
Right, exactly. And so this kind of predatory...
And it costs everybody.
Yep. And this kind of predatory lending eats away at the little security that people do have, who are getting low pay, low wages, and this just digs them further into a hole of disparity and inequity, and it's really a very toxic industry. And we hope that people will pay attention to this issue. It's linked to all other sort of debt issues. And for that reason, I'd also like to invite everybody to Citizen Action has every year held what's called the Financial Reform Summit, and it started when Dodd-Frank was enacted, and we bring in experts and panelists to talk about these very issues. We'll be talking about payday lending, student debt, medical debt. We'll also be talking about what some of the leaders and advocates in the state think should be part of the, the policy agenda going forward. We're looking at a new, possibly a new governor in 2017, and what kinds.
No, it's going to be a new governor.
Yeah, definitely, right. But
and it won't be this one.
Right. But we will. It's going to be. We're going to talk about what we think policies need to be put forth in order to deal with some of the horrible side effects, impacts from this kind of predatory lending. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be very interesting. We hope people will come to that. It's going to be at NJIT, October 7th, and people can register online at that same website, www.njcitizanaction.org.
New Jersey Citizen Action.
New Jersey Citizen Action. You do. I know. I don't know why I said that. I'm old-fashioned. I say that. And the other thing I wanted to say is that if people have had bad experiences with payday loans, I would like them to contact me. We are collecting stories. We can also point you to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. People can make complaints on their website. In the case of the woman that I mentioned before, when she made a complaint, that was when the lender finally agreed that that they would accept her request to negotiate, and they ended that loan. And it was only after she made that complaint. And in their letter to her, they said specifically, "We heard from the CFPB." So although there may not have been an official action taken against the company, they didn't want to bother with that. They get scared off, right? So I would really encourage people to contact me. The more stories we have to tell, the regulators and the CFPB in particular, the greater chance there is that they're going to tighten this rule and make it a strong rule, because it really does need to be stronger.
Well, that's the public comment. Well, Jerry, our producer, is going to put, I call him Jerry too, Jerry Schoenthal, will put your name and already has, I'm sure, as I'm speaking.
Okay.
Your name and the phone number.
Great. I really thank you. We need the comments. The industry is pushing hard on this. And I wanted to say that another thing the industry says is that if you tighten the rules on payday lending, people will have nowhere to go. Well, the fact is that New Jersey, New York, 14 other states, and the District of Columbia have prohibited payday loans. Although it happens here, it doesn't happen as much in other states, and people do find alternatives. That's about 90, those states equal, I think, 90 million people. We call ourselves Payday Freelandia.
Yeah.
And people, we do fairly well in general, and so there are alternatives. There are credit unions in some cases that have special, small dollar loans, but people really should stay away from, as you pointed out, these kinds of legal loan sharks that may not break your knees, but they break your financial back.
Which is, in some respects, worse, because your knees
long term. It's much
heal,
more long term. Exactly.
I think also, are we attempting to appeal to those that aren't directly affected by it? So, as we said, they understand the adverse effect it has upon them, even if they're not in that financial situation.
Absolutely.
Beverly Ruggia, thank you very much for being a guest on Labor's View.
Thank you, David. It's my pleasure. It's an honor for me.
We'll have you again, I'm sure.
I hope so.
And
thank
you for joining us on Labor's View. I'm David Weiner, and we hope to see you on future shows. Thank you.